We are particularly concerned that the harsher penalties proposed in this bill will disproportionately impact marginalized communities, especially members of the LGBTQ community.
If these are supposed to be our supporters and allies, I don't know why they would try to further perpetuate this old trope that LGBT people are predators. Not to mention, they also bring brown and black people into it. Let's talk about it. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, so this got sent to me by a couple of friends earlier today, and I had already seen it on my own, and I was like, this must be some sort of propaganda. This can't be what it actually appears to be. But I looked into it. By the end of the video, I will read to you guys what exactly this particular bill is, but it's not a good look for the LGBT community or people of color. But for now, I just want to share this caption with you guys, and then we'll move on to the rest of the video. And like I said, I'll read the bill. So this is a caption. SB 1414 is a proposal to make it a felony to purchase children for S in California. Woke activist groups oppose this bill by complaining that it will harm the LGBTQ community and people of color. Dems already watered down the bill. So we're going to talk about it a little bit, but I want to hear a bit more of what they're going to say. When I say young people, you guys are going to know what I mean. I've got to watch myself on this one because of YouTube. When I say the letter S, that's going to stand for the word that starts with an S, ends with an X, by a vowel to figure out what's in between.
An E. One E.
But I do want to hear this out because it's very insulting to me as a gay man, and it's also very insulting to me as a brown man.
SB 1414 takes an overly punitive approach that fails to address the root causes of these issues and will not effectively stop sexual violence.
Call me crazy, but is that something we really need to get to the root cause of while people are still free? Should there be any reason that you would be trafficking young ones? Because I can understand if you want to study it and see maybe what would drive somebody to that so that we can possibly prevent it in the future. But can't you do that from behind bars? Doesn't it seem like it's asking a lot to say, hey, citizens, this is something that you're just going to have to live with around you or amongst you because we think it seems unfair?
We are particularly concerned that the harsher penalties proposed in this bill will disproportionately impact marginalized communities, especially members of the LGBTQ community, who already suffer from systematic biases within the criminal justice system, particularly when it comes to sexually based offenses.
Okay, that I kind of get, because when it comes to adults being involved in prostitution, that's something that I know a lot of LGBT people haven't been treated fair, but we're not talking about that. What's being argued here really does not make sense to me right now. Maybe down in the comments you guys can let me know, but I think it is outright insulting that you're saying that I, as a gay man, have more of a propensity to get caught up in trafficking young ones?
Studies have shown that LGBTQ people, particularly gay and transgendered individuals, are more likely to be charged with sex offenses compared to their heterosexual counterparts. For instance, LGBTQ individuals are 9 times more likely to be charged with sodomy.
I read nothing in this bill about sodomy, so I don't know how we're talking about being 9 times more likely to be charged with sodomy. And of course, we're sodomites.
Measures like SB 1414 lead to higher rates of incarceration, longer sentences, and increased difficulties in finding housing and employment.
Yeah, if you're doing that kind of stuff with young people, nobody's going to want to live near you for a good reason. It's not just discrimination. That's about the fact that everybody's going to be rightfully concerned for their kids because you've already gotten in trouble for that.
Today, EBC must strongly oppose Senate Bill 1414. For the reasons I will state, we stand against any punitive measure that perpetuates systemic injustices, and we emphasize instead the need for community-based solutions. We strongly support investments in victim services and programs to provide housing and other alternatives to help people escape trafficking. We are concerned that the harsher penalties contained in this bill will disproportionately impact marginalized communities, particularly Black and brown individuals who already bear the brunt of systemic biases within our criminal justice system.
Why would they think that brown and Black people would be more likely by nature to be affected by this law that is specifically about trafficking young ones. I don't understand how this makes sense to them. This is why I tell you guys, activists really don't have a place in this world anymore. Activists really need to find other jobs, find other ways to occupy their time, because activists are not activisting. They are basically wasting time and creating controversy so that they can continue to have jobs. That's all that's happening here.
Under current California law, defendants could face years or even decades in prison for sexual violence committed against a minor.
Shouldn't they? Am I missing something? Did she really just say that? Let's hear it again.
Under current California law, defendants could face years or even decades in prison for sexual violence committed against a minor.
I think they should. Sexual violence against a minor? That's something we're trying to protect people from being punished for?
Not just 6 months in jail, as Senator Grove and prosecutors have previously claimed. Furthermore, the approach outlined in SB 1414 diverts resources from vital programs and services aimed at supporting survivors of human trafficking and sexual exploitation, opting instead to increase funding for lengthy jail terms. Our research has shown that punitive measures such as lengthy incarceration and registries do little to prevent crime or protect communities. Instead, they perpetuate cycles of incarceration, exacerbating the very problems they are meant to address. Rather than investing in punitive measures, we should be investing in community-based solutions that address the underlying issues driving exploitation. We should instead support survivors and heal.
Okay, so what is a justifiable reason to traffic a young person? What is the justifiable reason that we're supposed to be so sympathetic to in this? I'm not at all trying to be dense about this. I really don't understand what we're doing right now.
Healing and rebuilding their lives with access to housing and funding for service providers. Given this, we respectfully urge you to oppose SB 1414. Thank you.
Okay, I get the part that maybe some more attention should be paid to the survivors and helping them out. That I do 100% get, but I don't understand how we're in an either or situation. And if you're really an activist, why don't you be an activist for the children and see about where we can pull some other funds from? Because I'm sure there's a lot of money being mismanaged in California. And just by nature of the way government works, I'm sure there's a lot of money being mismanaged everywhere. So in California specifically, which is what we're talking about right now, why wouldn't they look further into other options or where that money could be pulled from, rather than trying to make it seem like an either or situation? And instead of being insulting enough to Black and brown as well as LGBT people, making it seem like we're the ones that need protection from this particular law or change in law.
Thank you.
And respectful opposition.
Shivani Nishar with Ella Baker Center in respectful opposition. I'm also registering opposition on behalf of Just Advocate, California Innocence Coalition, Uncommon Law, CURB, and Felony Murder Elimination Project.
Okay, so after that, that's just those buffoons letting them know that they're opposed, and I'm sure they did that on this video just to shame them, which I definitely do get why they would want to shame these people, because if they really consider themselves to be activists, they're doing a terrible job. Like, we almost don't even need anybody to be against us anymore as people of color or LGBT people, which we could argue back and forth about whether or not there are different ways that we're affected by any laws that are enforced, but I don't even want to go into that. What I want to concentrate on is when you've got people like this standing up for you and basically spreading this propaganda that because you're brown or LGBT, that you have a higher propensity for this type of behavior. To me, that's not helping. But I'll go ahead and read this article for you guys. It's from The Reason. It's just the one that I found that had the information in it. So I don't know whether The Reason leans left or right. You know how I do. I just read it to you guys and you extract the information. Anything that has this particular journalist giving an opinion is not my opinion. There is a slant to this article though. And well, let me just read the headline to you guys and then you guys can see what I was talking about. By the way, before we go any further, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to comment just to help me on the algorithm, but you don't know what to comment, I don't blame you if you don't know what to comment on this one. But just leave a knife because the playground predators are definitely going to come for my neck on this one. Okay, so the headline says California Democrats watered down trafficking bill, and then it says good. The original version was overly punitive, is what the subheadline says. California Democrats are taking heat for watering down a child trafficking bill, but as anyone whose brain isn't completely broken by politics might imagine, this isn't a case of lawmakers trying to make life easy for people who abuse and exploit children. They're just trying to insert a smidge of sanity into the bill's punishment schemes. The scorn with which this has been met underscores how hard it is for legislators to push back against policies that are purportedly about protecting children. The measure in question, Senate Bill 1414, was introduced in April by state senators Shannon Grove, Republican Bakersfield, Ana Caballero, Democrat Merced, and Susan Rubio, Democrat Baldwin Park. It would raise the penalties for soliciting minor for prostitution. It passed the state Senate in a 36-0 vote in May after being amended somewhat from its original form. It passed out of the Assembly Public Safety Committee in an 8-0 vote last week after another amendment was added. The amended bill now goes to the Assembly Appropriations Committee. It's these amendments that have some, including Grove, up in arms. The amendments. Under current California law, soliciting someone an offender knows or reasonably should know is a minor for prostitution is a misdemeanor. That's surprising. Punishable by mandatory minimum imprisonment of 2 days in county jail and a possible punishment of up to 1 year in jail and a $10,000 fine. That all seems really light for what I just said. As introduced, the bill would have raised the offense to a felony and the punishment up to a possible 4 years in state prison and a fine of $25,000, regardless of whether defendants knew or should have known the person was a minor, and regardless of whether defendants were themselves above age 18. It also included sex offender registration requirements. Okay, well, who that's a minor is out there buying relations? The original version had no mens rea component for applying enhanced penalties. That is, it didn't matter if the person charged had no reason to believe the person solicited was under age 18, and it had no exceptions for when the person doing the soliciting was also a minor. Under the amended versions of SB 1414, solicitation of a minor would sometimes be a misdemeanor punishable by up to 1 year in county jail and sometimes be a felony punishable by up to 3 years in county jail. The stronger punishment would be available only when the defendant was 18 or older and knew or should have known that the person who was solicited was a minor at the time of the offense, and it would only apply when the solicited minor was under 16 years of age at the time of the offense, or if the person solicited was under 18 years of age at the time of offense and the person solicited was a victim of human trafficking. A second or subsequent offense would always be a felony, and an offender more than 10 years older than the solicited minor would have to register as a sex offender for 10 years. All of that still sounds really light. Let me know if you guys disagree in the comments, but to me that does sound really light, but let's keep going. Note that nothing in the bill as introduced or amended would change penalties for people who force or coerce minors into prostitution, nor would it affect the laws surrounding sexual activity with the minor. This is about solicitation, which is essentially a speech crime. The asking about sexual activity or offering of money for sex. The bill does not require physical contact or sexual contact with the minor victim. According to the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, there are already felony crimes associated with actual lewd or sexual contact with a minor. The controversy. The amendments in SB 1414 have drawn criticism from Grove and others who claim the bill will now make it too hard to punish sex criminals. In reality, the amended bill simply allows punishments to be more tailored to circumstances. The amended bill will make it harder to punish everyone in a blanket way, but in a free society, we should consider that a good thing. That's where they're editorializing. The heat that those amending the bill have taken shows a wider problem in our criminal justice system, in which allowing for any nuance gets slammed as weak and inexcusable. But there's nothing weak about realizing that specific circumstances do matter, and that a one-size one-size-fits-all solution to law enforcement is likely to over-punish and over-incarcerate. I guess I get that, because somebody could just think they were soliciting an adult and it turns out that they're 17 or something like that, and they had no idea and they had no way of knowing. I know when I was doing SW, nobody ever asked me for ID, and like I told you guys, I was doing that stuff younger than I should have been. So I get that maybe somebody shouldn't have to deal with that punishment if they had no idea and no way of knowing. So I guess I get that part, and maybe they shouldn't be slammed for it, but you guys can let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. You guys could have different exchanges with prostitutes. I'm not trying to be silly, but you know, you guys might be ID checkers. I never had my ID checked by anybody in the entire time I was doing that. I did it long enough, but nobody ever asked me for an ID. Casino security did once in a while, but outside of that. Anyway, it takes courage to craft criminal justice solutions that are fair to both victims and to those accused of crimes. Whether this amended bill gets that balance right is up for debate. Contra its critics, there are ways in which it may still give too little credence to mens rea, but it's clearly at least attempting to grapple with gray areas. Under the amended version, adults defended who brazenly solicit minors for sex can receive a more extreme punishment, but defendants who are minors themselves, are barely over 18, or have no reason to know the person in question is a minor, may receive a lesser sentence. Punishments can be tailored to the circumstances. What's so bad about that? And that, like I said, clearly has a slant to it, but it gets the point across, and I let you guys know what SB 1414 is. If you guys thought that maybe there was something that you were missing and there was some way that you could excuse black or brown people for something that might be, but I still don't get it. And maybe I'm ridiculous, but to me, this is just once again activists trying to grab headlines and create their own work. So you guys can let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, but I am 100% insulted and don't see how this isn't going to be used against us as LGBT people and maybe even people of color in the upcoming election. This is just another thing for people to pile on and say, look, this is how crazy that particular group has gotten. This is the kind of stuff that they stand by, and this is going to get thrown at all of us, because I wish it just stayed localized and people actually understood that this was just activists with too much time on their hands and worried about job security. Instead, people are going to be like, the LGBT community was fighting against SB 1414, and we're all going to take heat for it. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. As always, this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.